What's going on, guys? Martino here from Extract Media. We're here to talk about She-Hulk Attorney at Law, created by Jessica Gao.
You think I'm jealous? Is that what I'm feeling?
Now, we have done individual episode reviews on the channel, but we haven't really dove in and done a retrospective overall review. Whether I liked the show, didn't like it, thought it was mediocre, whatever, I think a lot of people online, a lot of the chatter is starting to misrepresent what I feel the show actually was, so I want to talk about it here today. Let me start out by saying casting is not the problem with this show. I think Tatiana Maslaney did a really nice job here. She is a wonderful lead. She plays a great Jennifer Walters. I do feel like sometimes she was misused in the show, but that had nothing to do with her actual performance. I thought that she was not an issue with the show at all. I think the first 4 episodes of the show are really funny. They're really good. I would also like to point out that all 4 are directed by Kat Cairo, which may have something to do with that, but we'll get into that here in a little bit. I think the first episode, A Normal Amount of Rage, is actually really well directed. It's super funny, but it also has a really awesome origin story, and a lot of people thought the episode or the origin story felt super rushed, but I think it really set up in a nice way how we're going to do this half-hour format for a show in the MCU, which we hadn't really seen before, that sitcom format, you know what I mean? In this episode, we also see the return of Mark Ruffalo as Hulk, as Bruce Banner, who is Tatiana Maslaney's cousin in the show, Jennifer Walters' cousin, and I think these two just have really great chemistry together. I actually would have liked to have seen more of them together throughout the entirety of the show. But then we have the second episode, Superhuman Law, which I think is actually equally as funny and really well done. It does introduce Tim Roth, or reintroduce Tim Roth as Abomination, Emil Blonsky, and I like that we're approaching him from a different angle than we had seen his character before in the Incredible Hulk film. I thought Tim Roth did a bang-up job in this show. I thought he was one of the funnier aspects for sure. I also like that this episode set up a lot about Jen's family and how their relationship is. Mark Lynn Baker is a major standout as Jen's father here, though. I love the relationship they had together here, and I thought they had wonderful chemistry as well, and he was just so funny. But we also set up why Mark Ruffalo's Bruce Banner isn't going to be in the entirety of the show, and that's because he's got business to do in space, which I do like that intrigue that's set up here. The third episode, People versus Emil Blonsky, is actually a little bit of a downgrade for me, but I didn't think it was too terribly bad. I still thought it was fairly consistent with the things that I liked about the show so far. It includes a lot of courtroom buffoonery that I think a lot of people are going to like, myself included, but I think there's another pocket of people that aren't going to enjoy the stupidity, the buffoonery too much about this episode, honestly, and about this show in its entirety. I think it was just riding the line for me to where it could have pushed it too far in this episode, but then I really liked it too. It made me laugh. Obviously, this episode includes the Megan Thee Stallion moment that you've probably seen on the internet, considering it pretty much broke the internet when it happened, and I laughed at it. I thought it was funny, as silly and ridiculous as it was. It was just for a post-credit scene and kind of a throwaway moment that was funny. The fourth episode, Is This Not Real Magic, includes a character that a lot of people are familiar with. I won't give that away in case you hadn't seen the show yet. It's kind of a major surprise, but then there's another character in here called Madison with the Y, but the Y isn't where you think it is. You guys know who I'm talking about if you've seen the show. Maybe you know who I'm talking about even if you didn't give the show a shot. This is another character that reached that meme status that really just broke the internet, and I thought it was funny. The relationship between her and Wong, which, by the way, Benedict Wong is back in the show, and I loved all his moments too. I thought they were very funny, and I thought he did a great job. I always love seeing Wong appear in the MCU at any capacity, and I thought that this was no exception. The thing that really stood out to me about this episode in particular is the action sequence that's kind of longer. At this point in the series, it is the best action sequence we've been able to see, and I thought Kat Cairo did a great job directing action with this. One of the things I haven't really mentioned about the show so far is Jennifer Walters' CGI when she turns into She-Hulk. I think it's piss poor, and I think it actually gets worse as the series goes on. If you felt the same way, please let me know, because it was really bad for me. Like, it was hard to get across. At this point in the show, Anu Valia steps in to direct episodes 5, 6, and 7, and obviously there's hesitancy on my part for that because I was really enjoying what Kat Cairo did, and I was probably rightfully hesitant here. The 5th episode, entitled Mean Green and Straight Poured Into These Jeans, I think is where the show starts to get its real weak points. A lot of problems arise around here for me, including more of Jamil's Titania, which was set up in the first episode, but she is super annoying here. Her whole beef with Jen has to do with a branding issue that I really just did not care about, and I thought was a real weak storyline for the villain of the series. And all the jokes that they tried to do in this episode just did not land. They're just not funny. I feel pretty similarly about the 6th episode entitled Just Jen. It's not funny, but it does show off a little bit more of Jennifer Walters, Tatiana Maslaney's acting chops here. She's got really great comedic chops. It's not her delivery. I think her delivery was right on point. It was honestly the jokes themselves. And this episode includes more of Titania being annoying, but it did lead to an okay directed action sequence. Not great, but it was an okay directed action sequence. The whole episode revolves around a wedding with Jen, but there's also a side plot including Jen's friends being just lawyers, and I thought this was extremely underdeveloped because a lot of Jen's friends are just extremely underdeveloped in the series. I found myself having a real hard time caring about them, you know? This also goes down a storyline about trolls on the internet, and trolls are a very real thing, and I understand the want and desire to address that the way that they did here, but I did feel like the plot was very shoehorned into the show overall, and it just didn't work for me. It was another thing that made this episode very, very weak. But the 7th episode, entitled Retreat, directed by Anu Valia, it's probably the strongest direction we've seen from Anu Valia in the show. It's honestly one of the best and funniest episodes in the series. I gotta give Anu credit for that. I might be a little bit biased, but I was in from the beginning because it did start with a great Hayam song. It's one of my favorite Hayam songs. The song's entitled Now I'm In It. Shout out. I really like that song. I think it's extremely catchy, and it was a strong point for me in this episode, but that's probably just me. But the episode does decide to go outside of the city in terms of its location, and I think that really helped Anu Valia direct this a lot. I do feel like the Emil Blonsky of this episode, because he is back, is kind of a lot of what made this work, though. I do think that Anu Valia didn't really have a lot of ideas in terms of what to do with Jennifer Walters in this episode. I mean, I will say there is a nice touch of heart for Jen, but that's about it. It's finally the first time we're seeing any bit of heart for Jen. But because the jokes were really working in this episode, I think a lot of other things are forgiven about it, right? The writers really did a good job this time around, and it made me laugh a lot, so I had a fun time with that. The episode does end with a really cool plot twist too. I won't go into that, but it was something I really wasn't expecting. So I was happy going into the final 2 episodes because Kat Coiro was back, and she had done the first 4, which were the strongest in the series at this point. And I do think that Kat Coiro directs the hell out of these last 2. Brandon Stanley's leapfrog character is really dumb though. That was kind of a throwaway thing. I'm also not a huge fan of the costume designer. It wasn't the actor, it was the jokes that he was being fed by the writers that I didn't really enjoy. But the big thing about this episode is the return of Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock / Daredevil, right? And it's awesome, guys. It's awesome. Charlie Cox and Tatiana Maslaney have amazing chemistry immediately, especially with the real good lawyer courtroom banter that's going on. Amazing. All the action here is actually directed pretty stellar. I loved everything that Kat Coiro did when it came to the action here. Daredevil was unbelievable in this. Matt Murdock, it was great to see him again. But it kind of leads me to the thought again of I shouldn't want Daredevil to be in the show to make the show great. The show should just be doing great all on its own, and I hate that because there are other shows where they have the opportunity to bring in outside characters from their universe and they don't, and they're just fine. This show really needs the Emil Blonskys, it needs the Wongs, and I just really wanted the show at the end of the day to be more about Jen. Again, it was great to see Daredevil, and it was a cameo that made sense. He is also a lawyer, much like Jennifer Walters, so I'm not complaining entirely, but I just wish this show was as strong as it was every other time. This is definitely the best episode in the series, and a lot of that is due to the Daredevil angle. Because you have Daredevil coming into the episode, it's almost like the episode writes itself. But this episode does have an amazing cliffhanger that leads right into the 9th episode, and it really follows up that twist from the 7th episode. So I had a lot of problems with the finale personally. If you want to know them in depth detail, you can go check out my series finale thoughts. I do think the episode is incredibly well directed by Kat Coiro though. She has nothing to do with my problems with the episode. A lot of it is in the storytelling and the writing. I won't go into it as much. You guys probably already know what I'm talking about, but there's probably a lot of other people that haven't seen the show that I kind of want to avoid spoilers for. But the episode is loaded with cameos that don't make any sense. But then it decides to kind of divert and address the problems with the finale and the entire show in its entirety and the recent MCU in its entirety. And at that point, I was like, okay, that's an awesome angle to kind of start to address things. Now we can get back on track. And I like the risk involved with this, guys. I actually was really digging the episode up until this point. It's very much influenced by Mel Brooks's Blazing Saddles. You guys probably know what I'm talking about when I say that. But then we come back from this diversion, and then we get an episode, or a finale rather, that doesn't make sense, includes cameos that don't make sense, which are all the things that the show just addressed and kind of spoke out against and kind of said to the audience, hey, we're going to try to clean this stuff up. And then it ended up just delivering us a lackluster ending anyway. So I didn't really understand the point point of what they were trying to do. I actually thought the show was going to be like, surprise, there's the 10th episode to try to clean up even further, honestly. Overall, guys, the show has fun areas, but it can't really find the mark. In fact, it completely misses it for me. There's a level that I really want these MCU shows to be at that a lot of them just haven't been able to really get to, and this one especially had to be the weakest one of the bunch. All right, guys, those are my thoughts on She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Let me know what you thought of it. Have you seen it? I am going to give this show a might watch. If you're sitting around, you got nothing better to do, definitely check it out. All right, guys, for my outside recommendation this week, I couldn't really think of anything that really compares to this, nor would I want to recommend you anything that compares to this show, but I am going to recommend you something that takes place very much in the same universe as this, and it's the Incredible Hulk. This movie actually gets overlooked a lot, but as it stands for me, this is the best ever made Hulk film. It's also the second installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so if you guys want to get caught up, this is a great one to watch. I actually really like this movie. I think it's incredibly underrated, incredibly overlooked. A lot of the reasons because Edward Norton stars as Hulk and it's not Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo has had more time and does a great job as Hulk, but I really liked Edward Norton's Bruce Banner here a lot better personally for me. I always do kind of wonder what would the universe have been like if we had Edward Norton playing Hulk all the time. I don't know, guys, not a slight at Ruffalo. I really do love Ruffalo right now. He is our Hulk. He is the Hulk as per She-Hulk as well. Anyway, guys, before I get going, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave some feedback in the comment section, share this with your friends, and hit that bell for notifications. I have been Martino, and I will talk to you guys later.